greatest moment. This is the greatest moment for us as international students, and particularly when I see Patavee and Betsy, I'm reminded of Mice and Men, a book by John Steinbeck. Somewhere between the pages, someone says that nowadays, I haven't seen a guy who takes so much trouble for another guy. We feel that Patavee and Betsy, through your activities, you indeed take a lot of our troubles. And being in this presence at this moment, we are actually honored having you. So my task is quite simple. I just introduce the speakers, and I will just have the first speaker and then the second speaker. And then eventually, whoever has the questions, I have no doubt that there are mountains of questions, then they'll be submitted and be answered by our experts. So to begin with, Betsy Cohen is the executive director of the St. Louis Mosaic Project, a program of the World Trade Center, St. Louis, within St. Louis Economic Development Partnership. In 2019, Betsy was ranked as one of the top 50 Missourians by a reputable magazine. She's the author of the book, Welcome to the USA, You Are Hired, which was launched in 2021. The graduate of Harvard Business School is no doubt a renowned upstander for immigrants, a foremost ambassador who engages government, business leaders, and government to hire more international students, and at the same time, killing all those ancient stereotypes and perceptions of foreign workers and families. I first met her in New York Times, and her words in the paper were, St. Louis Mosaic Project has a goal of becoming the fastest growing major metropolitan area for foreign-born residents by 2020. And our one-on-one meeting earlier this month, Betsy made me believe some ladies can be two things, generous and fabulous. Betsy, this is your time. We are glad having you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I am really happy to be here with you. And it is a pleasure. As you said, I had a long corporate career. And after that corporate career with Nestle, a company that's known around the world, I had a chance to have a second career and may have a third career. We all have many opportunities in our lives. And in my second career, I saw that there was an opportunity in St. Louis because a team had been put together, research had been funded, a position had been funded to help the region grow more foreign-born people because our region has been stagnant at about 2.8 million people. And as the paper has shown in the last few days, we are losing some of our native-born people, particularly both white and Black, and foreign-born is small but growing. And for the growth of the region, if we grow the foreign-born people, it's good for the region, but it also makes us more attractive to other people who are native-born, particularly younger workers who want to work in a multicultural community. And so it's in all of our interest. And so in my second career, I had a chance to do work that is about making the region better. And I was a marketing expert at Nestle, and now I can market the region. And the product is both St. Louis and you. You are part of that because if you're successful, we will be successful. So that is what motivates me. And that's why being an ally to Jeffrey and to all of our different foreign-born and ethnically diverse community, my family came to the United States in 1850. That's a long time ago. They came from Germany because it was bad in Germany and they left. So they came here for an opportunity, but that was a long time ago. But they came and they were leaving something bad to come for a better life. And that's why they came. And several generations later, I am here. And I know that we can be a better region and that when you are here and you are successful, it will be better for all of us, not just for you, but it's going to be better for me as well. It's better for all of us. And that's the message I share with people who have been in St. Louis a short time or a long time. And it motivates me every day because I meet great people. I was an international exchange student in France, lived out of the country. And to me, meeting people from different countries, different experiences is what makes my life joyful. So for me, being part of the St. Louis Mosaic Project and as the executive director, the goal is to increase our foreign-born population. We have programs for work authorized people who already are looking for jobs. We post jobs on the website. We have a professional connector program for networking to help people make personal connections. We help immigrant entrepreneurs connect to funding. We don't have the funding, but we help them connect to funding. And we have groups for international men and women, and also for some mentoring programs where some local women mentor international women. And so that's something that's been very important. The other part that we do is we work with international students, and we work with 17 international student offices at different universities. And we usually work through the universities, not directly one-on-one with individual students. And so we work with the universities, we speak, we're a team of 3, Suzanne Sierra, who is Hispanic, and Annie Mbale, who's originally from Malawi, who is part of our African community here. Annie just joined our team 2 weeks ago, and she had been an international student at the University of Missouri and with her MBA. And so she, as she learns more, she will be out speaking and again, being a connection point. The thing that's important is I wanted to share my screen and show you the website page that is our Mosaic Project International Student page. Can you see that okay?
Yes.
And so for international students, we have information. There's some videos about what will work. We have some resources down below about tips and trends and data and networking, and some videos of people who have been successful as international students. And so that's at the stlmosaicproject.org. And I'll put that in the chat when I finish talking and Patavee is talking. The other thing that Jeffrey did ask me to mention was my book, and I will put the Amazon link, Welcome to the USA, You're Hired, a guide for foreign-born people seeking jobs. And it has 6 chapters and stages, including getting ready, the stresses, how hard it is, how you overcome that, how you keep your motivation, how do you prepare for interviews, what do you say in interviews, what is someone like Betsy likely to ask you, and what is the best way for you to answer? What about when you get a job offer? Can you negotiate? Yes, no, how do you do it? What happens when you join a company? How do you move up? And there's a special chapter just about international students that was partly written by Global Detroit, because they have even more international students than we do. And it makes my book more valuable that 12 national experts have written in the book with me. And so the international student chapter has great advice. The very best advice talks about networking and making relationships in your community very early. You cannot call Jeffrey or Betsy or Patavee in April and say, I'm graduating, I need to get my OPT. Could the person please, could Aframael, could you please mute? Thank you. You need to start early to make relationships with people through classmates, through the African Chamber of Commerce and Vitendo for Africa, through your own academic interests. If you're in marketing, there's an American Marketing Association. If you're in engineering, there's an engineering club. But you need to make relationships so someone finds you and wants to make the effort to hire Patavee to help them hire you. It doesn't happen at the last minute. It doesn't happen with a resume that is put out there with 1,000 other resumes. But the book discusses how important relationships are and the time it takes, where you can find those relationships using LinkedIn and making authentic relationships. And the word I use, and I'll leave you in closing, is this one word, and I want you all to say it. Put it in the chat for me, irresistible. So put the word in, irresistible, and I'm going to spell it, I-R-R-E-S-T-I-B-L-E, irresistible. I'm close on it. I'm talking and writing, but irresistible. I think I spelled it wrong. But to be irresistible, there you go. Thank you, Patavee. Jeffrey, what does it mean for someone to be irresistible? What is irresistible versus just being good?
I think being irresistible is when everybody wants to work with you. There's something unique with that you have that they cannot see it with others. So you have to present it in a way that people would definitely want to be work with you.
Perfect. So you can't just be good. You can't even be strong. You have to be irresistible. They have to want to know you. They want to know your culture. They want to know what you like. And you have to want to know them. So you need to know that Betsy likes to do yoga and Pilates, and I like to read. And then you might say, oh, my friend likes Pilates too. Where do you do that? Or, Betsy loves Indian food, and I would like to try more African food. So you need to find ways to make those connections and authentic relationships, and that will lead to a job. Even though you might want to tell me how great you are at your work and your studies, I know that, but you're going to have to make those relationships. So I'm going to turn it over and let an introduction be made for Patavee, and I will stay on, and I'll be here for questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Wow, thank you so much, Betsy. I think you are smart. You're very smart. Just few words and they speak volume.
Mhm.
That's very good of you. We really appreciate that. And by the mere fact you are a writer, that speaks a lot about you and your legacy. You are sure it goes to eternity. Now the second speaker will be Patavee Vanadilok. Well, when you look at my hand, my barber is out of town, and for a few weeks now, I have not been okay with the guy who has been doing my haircut. Even I complained to a few friends, I might file a lawsuit. He has been doing it so badly. Yet at this moment, I feel delighted to meet Patty for the second time, for I feel like I'm meeting my barber, the one who has been out of the town. Because finding a good lawyer, a good attorney, is like finding a good barber. You must go to the same guy again and again. This is the second time I'm meeting Patavee, and Patty, I'm so happy that you joined us. I met Patty last year, and I have always wished listening to her wisdom. She's an immigration attorney who loves her clients and loves the practice of immigration law. She feels privileged, very privileged, to support everyone and their dreams, be it migrant workers, foreign investors, and international students. Well, when your barber is around, you look just at the mirror and let her do her things. Patavee, please do your things.
There's the unmute button. Solomon, that's so beautiful. First, I want to say thank you to Betsy. You guys are really in a treat for being in the presence of Betsy, because like she said, she has been devoted to welcoming and supporting and growing the immigrant community in St. Louis for, is it over 10 years now? 15? I'm not even sure. It's been a long time. Betsy, you're on mute.
Nine this month.
And a large part of that, yes, has been directed at supporting international students like you. And Betsy and her team really have their finger on the pulse of what's going on with St. Louis, and particularly with jobs and employment. So I hang on every word that Betsy says. And so I hope that you did too. Go and buy her book, because I'm sure it will be full of really valuable advice for all of you as students navigating your way, transitioning from being students into the professional world. And it's not easy. There are a lot of soft skills that go into it. And those are some of the things that Betsy talked about. And Solomon, thank you for the reminder of Mice and Men. And I'm grateful to be part of this group, because I think that, with Betsy and Mosaic Project and Sebastian and Jeffrey and Solomon and everyone at Vitendo, there is always this yearning to pay it forward. So, I mean, Betsy, you talked about your family coming in the mid, 1850s, and that you have benefited from all of the hard work and the struggles that they went through as immigrants in the United States. And even though you may be several generations later, you've benefited from what has come before you. And that is what Jeffrey has done, what Sebastian has done. Solomon, you have benefited from the work that Jeffrey and Sebastian have done with Vitendo, but I also know that as a student, people look up to you as a mentor and as a leader on how to navigate the next steps. And I think everyone in this group has that feeling of wanting to pay gratitude to the people who have supported us before, but paying it forward to the next generation. So thank you for letting me be part of this. So we've got a lot to cover. I'm an attorney, so I talk a lot and I talk fast. A couple of things. I do have a PowerPoint presentation, so I'm going to pull it up, and you can, if any of you want the PowerPoint or the materials, you can email me, and I will make sure that someone in my office emails you the PowerPoint presentation and other materials after tonight. Let me think. Oh, people who know me, any one of you who have been in a consultation with me, you know that I always start really big picture. So I'm going to start airplane view, 30,000 foot. We'll come down to maybe 20,000 foot, 10,000 foot, maybe bird's eye view. We don't have a lot of time tonight, so we're not going to be able to get to street level or granular level. If you have those questions, reach out to me separately. Also for the Q&A, we are probably not going to be able to get to your own personal, granular level questions, but if you have a question that is of more general interest to the larger group, I think those would be appropriate for the Q&A. I don't know, let's get started. So I'm going to see if I can do this screen share. And where is all my stuff? Hold on. I apologize. My stuff is not up. I thought I had everything prepared.
Take your time.
There it is. And here's the other one. Okay. It has been a crazy time. No, not this one. Okay, here we go. Now can we find it? There. Okay. So here is my contact information. If any of you want to email me here and I will email you the slides. And here's our agenda for today. So basically, most of you are international students. So we're going to start where you are. You have to know where you are starting in order to know where you are going. So I suspect most of you are F1 international students. A few of you out there may be J1 exchange visitors. So we're going to talk a little bit about the F1 and the J1 and where you are now. I think the large majority of you may have some interest in working in the United States. So the H-1B visa is a very common one that a lot of you are interested in. So we will spend some time there. Jeffrey referenced adjustment of status. Adjustment of status is more specific about green cards and permanent residency. That is a technical term in immigration. So there is change of status where you might be changing from like an F1 to an H-1B or a B1, tourist visa to an F1. Change of status is a little bit different from adjustment of status. So in technical terms, if you're talking about adjustment of status, we really are talking about green card and permanent residency, meaning you want to live, work, and play permanently in the United States. Solomon asked to cover maybe some common mistakes. So we might touch on that a little bit. I have some tips on maximizing your OPT and your job search. I'm probably not going to cover that, but I will just include it in the PowerPoint, and you can read it on your own later. But that's kind of our agenda for tonight. So we're going to start here. Like I said, I think most of you are F1 international students. You probably know what that is. I mean, you are a full-time student working towards a degree. You are probably already familiar with the work opportunities, CPT, OPT, and STEM OPT. So I'm not even going to spell out those acronyms. I suspect that you already know what those are. And then the exchange visitors is another category of non-immigrant visa. So with the non-immigrant visas, you are here temporarily, which means you can be here for 6 days, 6 months, 6 years can be temporary. These are always with a specific purpose, and they're always supposed to be with this intention to return to your home country. So the F1, your specific purpose is to be a student and to earn a degree here in the United States. And then presumably after you graduate and finish your OPT, you will go home. The exchange visitor, your specific purpose is some kind of training or cultural exchange. It's a funny one because this can cover seniors in high school who want to do a senior study abroad. It can cover medical graduates. It covers a lot of, there are a lot of J1 scholars and research scholars. There are people here who are on a business track who are potentially looking at an MBA or are working here, gaining real world work experience in the United States, perhaps in the hospitality industry. It also covers au pairs. But because the specific purpose of the J1 is exchange, so exchange of training or exchange of cultural experience, it will often have this requirement of a 2-year home residency requirement, where you come here and you gain your training or your cultural experience, but you are supposed to bring that and enrich people at home. So your presence here on a J1 enriches Americans in your program, and then you take your American experience and then you take it home to enrich people there. And so sometimes J1s will have a couple of additional limitations or barriers in terms of transitioning towards things like an H-1B or certain other green card or working visas. And so we will touch on that a little bit in case any of you out there today are J1s. So you're here, you're either an F1, maybe a J1, but H-1B is a very common visa that many people want to take a look at. So if you're here on an F1, again, your specific purpose is to be a student. You can work under very limited circumstances under CPT and OPT. But if you graduate and you want to work, if you work under an F1, you will be in violation of your F1. So you really have to transition to a particular working visa. H-1Bs are for specialty occupations. I'll let you read this here. I'm not going to go into it. There's a little bit of a misconception. So H-1B is another non-immigrant visa. So an H-1B will allow you to work legally in the United States, but it is not a forever type of working visa. If you get approved for an H-1B, you will be approved for an initial 3 years. You can extend it one time for an additional 3 years, but after year 6, in theory, you're supposed to return home to your home country and then spend a year abroad and come back and apply again for another 3 year plus 3 year. In reality, I think a lot of people will use this to try to get an H-1B, and then hopefully during that time, your employer will find you so irresistible they can't live without you and will want to sponsor you for a green card and really permanent residency here in the United States. I think a lot of employers, frankly, have a little bit of this misconception too, that the H-1B is what will allow a student like you to work here forever. It's not, but it is an important visa to consider. So one of the issues with the H-1B is there is a quota or cap. So every year there are only 65,000 H-1Bs that are allowed per year. There are an additional 20,000 H-1Bs that are set aside for people with a US master's degree. But this is called the H-1B cap. And this year, so I regret to say that the time period for applying for an H-1B has already passed. So this year, the pre-registration period was from March 1st through March 18th. Basically, right now, we are starting to hear whether people have been selected for the H-1B lottery and whether they can continue to submit full applications for an H-1B. So this is what Betsy talked about. You have to start really, really early, networking, making those contacts, convincing an employer that you are absolutely irresistible and that they really want to sponsor you for an H-1B. And so I know when you first arrive in August, you feel overwhelmed. You're trying to get to know the campus and where your classes are and taking your classes and exams, but really you have to start from day one, networking, putting things out there in terms of what kind of job you are looking for, securing that job. So in reality, if you are looking at an H-1B, like I said, this year, you're a little bit late with maybe a few exceptions. But next year, I mean, you'll want to know that by January or February, most employers are probably contacting their lawyers like me, starting to submit the paperwork and the information so that we can be prepared to submit the pre-registration on March 1st through March 18th. And really, some of the employers that are really early are probably going to start preparing in November or December, which means you really need to have established those relationships that by November or December, or at the very latest January or February, they are saying, yes, I love Solomon and I can't live without him, and I want to sponsor him for an H-1B. So it comes fast. You have to do the job search in addition to your studies, no question. And it is much harder for you as an international student than it is for any of your American classmates. You just have to be better and more prepared and plan ahead, many more degrees than your American counterparts do. So we talked about this cap. What happens is, with the cap, basically, there are not enough H-1Bs. So you may or may not be able to read this. I know it gets pretty small, but there was a time where we didn't even have 65,000 people applying for H-1Bs. And so there were always H-1B visas available any time of year. So anytime you had established that employment relationship and your employer felt like, yes, I'd like to sponsor this person for an H-1B, there was one available, and you could just simply submit the application and hope that you met the qualifications and receive an H-1B. But as you can see, supply does not meet demand. And so more and more people apply every year. And we have reached the point where you can see in 2015, we had 172,000 people applying for those 65,000 spots. In 2020, it was 201,000 people applying for those spots. In the past couple of years, they have implemented this new H-1B lottery. So you can see last year's H-1B, we had 308,000 people applying for the 65,000 H-1Bs that are available. And so that's why we go into this lottery system. That's why we have this whole system where, the first step in applying for the H-1B is you have to submit the pre-registration, which that period is usually the first couple of weeks in March. And then basically tomorrow or soon, we should be finding out from USCIS, all those people who, if you were selected for the lottery, what that means is now you and your employer can submit the full H-1B application for consideration by USCIS. You'll have 90 days to do that. I suspect they may open up a few more H-1Bs later in the year. They did last year. However, I don't think you would be considered for those unless you had submitted a pre-registration. So hopefully most of you guys got good advice and already submitted a pre-registration and are just waiting to hear whether you were selected for the lottery. If not, hopefully you're still in your degree program and you haven't started OPT and you have time. And certainly for those of you who will have STEM OPT, you will have additional years in OPT to apply. So you'll have a couple of additional shots, even if you don't get selected for lottery this year. So in a nutshell, I think that's kind of the basics to know about H-1B. It's really technical and there's a lot more we could cover, but we just don't have time. So let's move on. This covers some of the things that we talked about that you really need to be starting from day one. So honestly, Jeffrey, we should probably do this presentation in October, maybe September, as soon as students kind of get on campus, because you really need to plan this into your timeline of your professional development. And I know a lot of people just don't have this information, and it's important to know. So we'll try to get this to you as early as possible, and so that you can start strategically planning your careers along with your studies and exams and all of those other things. As we mentioned earlier, there are a few additional guidelines for the J1. So remember, we talked about J1s. Your specific purpose for a J1 visa is the cultural exchange. So first, you need to determine whether or not you are subject to the home residency requirement. Not everyone is, but a lot of you will be. If you are, you can change status to a couple of other things. You can change to an F1, you can change to an O1, but you cannot change status directly into an H1B, like we just talked about, or an L, which is another one of the working visas, or even a K visa, which is one of the fiance or spouse visas, until you satisfy that 2-year home residency requirement. So for you Js, you may be able to switch to an F1, but you're still going to either want to plan on and put that into your professional plan, going home for at least 2 years cumulatively to satisfy that 2-year home residency requirement and that training or cultural exchange. So some J1s are not subject to the 2-year home residency requirement. You also cannot get your green card. So whether that is through family sponsorship or employment sponsorship until you have met this 2-year home residency requirement. So either one, plan it into your professional trajectory. There are limited waivers for the 2-year home residency requirement. They are very difficult to get, and they are for very specific and narrow circumstances. So if you think you might want to look at a waiver, I wouldn't bet on it, but start talking to an immigration attorney early to see whether you do. Again, they're really pretty specific. Sometimes I think you might be able to be a little bit creative about meeting that 2-year home residency requirement. So if you are Kenyan, potentially, if you are maybe, I don't know, working on a research project in collaboration with the Kenyan government, where arguably your experience here on the J1 is also contributing back to your home country, that can be, but again, that's really difficult to prove, and you know, it's very narrow circumstances that something like that might work, but there may be some other creative ways of satisfying that 2-year home residency requirement. But again, you specifically cannot switch straight from a J1 into an H if you are here on a J1. And again, that doesn't go away ever. So even if you become an F1 or an O1, you know, and then later you want to get your green card, you're still going to have to deal with this 2-year home residency requirement. So yeah, J1s will have a couple of additional considerations to think about. So in spite of all of that, and in spite of the lottery and the mass numbers of people who apply for H-1Bs and this restriction that we still only have the quota or cap, the H-1B is still a really important and viable option. And you should definitely think about it and consider it. But there are always alternatives. And again, I don't think we have a lot of time to cover these, but there are cap exempt petitioners. So in particular, if your employer is a university, or if you are research oriented, your employer may not even be subject to this whole H-1B cap. And so we may not even have to worry about it. And so assuming you have a cap exempt employer, we may be able to apply at other times during the year and not consider the cap. So if you might fall into one of these categories, again, start talking to your research institution or university if you are more scholar and academia inclined. And then we have other visa categories. A lot of you may want to consider an O, especially if you have a lot of research, you do a lot of publications, you've won a lot of awards in your field. The L ones are for intra-company transferees. So in general, that would require that you have worked for an international company like Nestle that Betsy worked with for at least one of the past 3 years. So it may not be a good fit for many of you if you have been a student for the past couple of years, but it is one to consider. And then, so here we're going to talk about the green card options. So I know Solomon, you asked about adjustment of status and some of the green card options. So, you know, with the H-1B, that is a non-immigrant visa. So again, it is intended to be temporary. It is not intended to give you a working visa status that will allow you to work here forever. It is temporary, you know, 3 years, maybe 6 years max. But it is not a green card. So again, green card is permanent residency. This is really, you want to live, work, and play permanently in the United States. It's very strong status. It is not as strong as US citizen, but it gives you a lot of options. Green card is going to be a little bit different. We'll start at the bottom. And actually, I forgot to add to this one. So a lot of Kenyans and a lot of Africans do apply for the diversity visa. It is definitely one to consider. Diversity visa, again, there is a quota. There are only 55,000 diversity visas allowed per year. And I can't remember if it's like 13 million people apply, but it's a lot. But it is designed to encourage people where we don't have countries that we don't have a lot of immigration from. It's to encourage you to apply. So I know a lot of Kenyans come on diversity visa, Togo. I have had clients who have been accepted into diversity visa their first time they apply. I've had clients apply 5 times, 10 years in a row. I have one client, she and her husband came here to Lindenwood and Webster universities, and she applied for 20 years and she finally got diversity visa. And by this time, her oldest daughter was about to go to college herself, but some of you will get lucky. First year, you'll be under the lucky star, and some of you, it may take a couple of years, but that application period is only open between October to November. It's online, it's easy, it's free. So definitely consider applying for the diversity visa if you really think that you would like to get a green card and stay here in the United States. I always look at trying to double or triple your luck and see if we can put as many fishing poles out there and as many options out there as possible, and then see which one is the easiest, fastest, is the best way to get you here. And if you don't get diversity visa for 20 years, but something else comes through, we can always withdraw. But also you have some backup options. So, I look at trying to double or triple your luck. I look at trying to give you some backup options in addition to what may be the primary alternatives you are pursuing. So number one, consider the diversity visa. For some of you, again, starting at the bottom, family-based is kind of what a lot of you know. So it would be your spouse or a parent or sibling, some family member sponsoring you for a green card. Usually that will require that your family member be a US citizen, maybe a green card holder first in order to be able to sponsor you. But many international students, you come here and you are gung-ho and set on your degree and your professional trajectory, and Cupid's arrow kind of hits you and you meet the love of your life. And so it doesn't happen all the time, but it happens for a lot of international students that you're
asking about free parking.
You meet someone special, and so maybe a family-based sponsorship is an option for you. So moving on to EB2 and EB3, this will probably cover most of you guys. EB3 and EB2 are for professionals and people with advanced degrees. So in general, if you are here as an international student, if you have if you get your bachelor's degree or a master's degree or PhD, you will probably be eligible for something like an EB2 or an EB3. This is kind of the more traditional employment-based type of sponsorship where you might have your employer is your petitioner or sponsor, will sponsor you as an employee, and you as the employee will be the beneficiary. Usually these are going to be a 3-step process. Your employer is going to have to put out some recruitment for the job ad of the job that they want you to fill, to make sure that there are no American workers who are able and qualified and willing to do the job. So that is going to have to go through Department of Labor first. The second step is going to be a visa petition where the employer is going to talk about the job they want to sponsor you for and the job duties. And we are also going to verify that you have the qualifications and experience to do that job. And then step 3 is always going to be background checks. So even if steps 1 and steps 2 get approved, no problem. American immigration is funny because you have to prove that you qualify for the visa you're applying for, but then for green cards, you also have to prove that there are no inadmissibility factors against you. So this is the point where they are going to look at your medical to make sure that you don't have active tuberculosis, you have all of your vaccinations, that you won't make people sick. They're going to look at your police records. So if you have a really horrible police record, they can deny your green card. They're going to do background checks and make sure that you are not a spy or a terrorist and that you don't have interests that would hurt the United States. They're going to look at public charge and make sure you have the financial ability to support yourself and your family here in the United States without going on food stamps or Medicaid. So step 3 is always going to be about background checks. So again, EB2 and EB3 are going to be probably the most common pathway towards an employment-based green card. But then there is EB1 and then a special subcategory of EB2. So EB1 is also an employment-based green card category. It has 3 subcategories. You can see there's the multinational executives and managers, but I think for most of you, you'll probably be the 2 and 3. So for those who are interested in academia, you might be looking at EB1B, outstanding professors and researchers, that particular subcategory, and then EB1C, persons of extraordinary ability. Actually, no, this is in the wrong order. EB1A is persons of extraordinary ability. Multinational executives and managers is C. But persons of extraordinary ability can be a one-time achievement, like winning the Nobel Peace Prize or a Nobel Prize, or sustained international or national acclaim. And so there are a set of criteria, and if you meet at least 3 of, I think, 8 criteria, you might be a good candidate for EB1A. And then under EB2, there is another special subcategory. You can see there is the national interest waiver. So the thing about EB1A and EB2 national interest waiver is you can potentially self-petition, meaning you may not necessarily need an employer to sponsor you. Excuse me. You may be able to self-petition and sponsor yourself just based on your own merit, your own criteria, your own awards and achievements that you have already achieved. So it also will cut out that first step of the labor certification that we would have to do under a traditional EB2 and EB3. So that is a very big picture look at the green cards. There are a couple of other alternatives, special mention. I'm just going to list them here. We're not really going to cover them today, but again, you can email me and I'll send you the PowerPoint so that you can take a look at this on your own. And then Solomon asked about common mistakes. And I would say, in short, just don't make them, please. It makes your life and my life a lot harder as we are trying to expand your immigration options. So as we mentioned, non-immigrant visas, like your F1, like the J1s, like H1Bs, because of that specific purpose, they are very much restrictive in terms of what you can do and what you cannot do. So it is easier to inadvertently get into trouble. So just be very, very careful, especially for the F1s and J1s. Check in with your DSOs on campus. If you are not sure about something, ask them first. So for an F1, you do have to stay within a full course load. Don't go to part-time. I had a student years ago whose academic advisor, who didn't know better about immigration matters, said, oh, if you're very stressed out, you can take a semester off. You cannot. And you also cannot work during that time. So if you are here as an F1 and you drop to a part-time course load, or you drop your classes and take a semester off entirely, you are now in violation of your F1 visa. And we're going to have to do some things to clean it up. So if you have any questions about your course load, about your studies, about your employment while you are in an F1, check with your DSO first. Again, as an F1, do not engage in unauthorized employment. So check with your DSOs about what you can do under CPT, under OPT, under STEM OPT. If you have any questions about it, check with your DSO, and they will probably also advise you once you do get into your OPT, you have certain limitations in terms of how many days of unemployment. So you can't just not look for a job and hang out and say, oh, I'm here on OPT. Like, you know, you're allowed some days without employment under OPT, but not a lot. So as Betsy mentioned, you really, really do need to be searching for your job, even for OPT very early. It is job placements under OPT are hard to get. Don't rest on your laurels. You gotta hustle. Don't get arrested, no fighting, no drunk driving, please. Just stay out of trouble, focus on your studies and your exams and your networking. But if you do get into a little bit of trouble, I would consult with both a criminal law attorney and an immigration attorney, because not all criminal law attorneys are aware of immigration consequences. Hopefully it is something that is not a big deal, but some things can be sticky. So just be really careful. And, as Betsy reiterated, it is really important for you guys to strategically plan and map out your professional trajectory, especially for the J1s, if you need to factor in that 2-year home residency requirement. And even for H-1Bs, you just have to know what that timeline looks like and also plan back. So like Betsy mentioned, I have had students come to me in like May after graduation in the last couple of days of their OPT and say, hey, I want to stay. I want to apply for this H-1B thing that I heard about. And I say, unless you have an employer lined up who is willing to sponsor you, I cannot. And if it's May, we've missed the boat for pre-registration for sure. And again, don't think that you're going to be able to come to me on March 1st and apply, because unless you have already worked with your employer, proven your ability, made yourself irresistible, that they really want to take a risk and sponsor you for an H-1B, by March 1st, it's far too late. You want to have established that working relationship and demonstrated your capability with them probably months in advance. So definitely take advantage of OPT for that, and plan really, really early. And then I think the last few slides are some of the tips on maximizing OPT. And again, I'm not going to cover these, but email me and someone in my office will email you the PowerPoint presentation and a couple of materials, and you can read some of the stuff on your own. And again, reach out to the Mosaic Project, because they do have a lot of wonderful programs. I know in the past you guys have done programs on the soft skills, the resume development, cover letters, networking, informational networking, how all that works and how invaluable it is. So
Yeah,
I know that's a lot. Yeah, I'll pause there.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think it seems like the current president and the administration is expanding to try to attract and keep some of our terrific international talent. They added 22 more categories for STEM OPT. It used to, so a lot more categories will qualify you to stay for 1 year plus 2 more years. The whole national interest waiver, proving you do scientific work or geospatial work or mapping, it's getting easier to prove how do you get a national interest waiver. And the planning for the outstanding O visa, international students are strategically going to lawyers and saying, how can I how can I get in a publication? How can I get nominated for an award? How can I get, so you have to like build the case about why you might really qualify for being outstanding, but you're going to have to plan for it. And you might say, Jeffrey needs to nominate me for an award, and, Betsy needs to do this, or my university needs to help me get a special research project, and my name needs to go on it. So there are some things that are opening up, but you have to plan for them in the plan. And my only other point is, with more companies now due to the pandemic understanding remote work, it is more possible that you could work here and then continue to work for an American employer while going back to your home country as a consultant to the company. And so in some ways, going back to a home country for a period of time, and then you might come back here, that this new remote options for many professional jobs can provide some opportunities, and it also can provide a conversation point with a potential employer who says, well, what if we can't get the visa for you? You can say, well, if I'm doing great work, I might need to go back. I can work remotely. You have people working remotely all the time. So I think the times may play in your favor right now.
Absolutely. And to your point, Betsy, anyone who does not, in the next, week or so, if you find out you were not selected for H-1B lottery, there may be some potential Canadian options that would allow you to work in Canada, but be contracted back to your American employer. So, those might be things to think about or reach out about and learn more about. So anyway, I hang on to your every word, Betsy. Solomon, are you on mute?
Oh, yes. Wow, thank you so much. I give you kudos. Thanks so much for that. You remind me of a lawyer that I visited a year ago. I had a trouble. Not a trouble anyway, but I really needed to consult something. And I just spent about 10 minutes with him. And after that, he said, do you know how much you charge? And he read my reaction on the face. And he told me, for the 10 minutes that you have been with me, that's accounts to $100. And now here I see you are spending an hour, more than an hour with us for pro bono. You are not charging. And that's why I had to call my friends and tell them, you know what, there is something free here. We can all gather and harvest and take home. And so thanks for nurturing us so much. You and Betsy, you are really an umbrella for us. And it seems you are the closest to us. You understand the troubles, the challenges that we go through. And that's quite important for us. And back to Steinbeck's, you have read him, and of course, you have heard the slim saying that ain't too many guys travel around together. I don't know why. Maybe everybody in the whole damn world is scared of each other. But you and Betsy, you have never been scared of international students, of immigrants, of foreign workers, which is quite crucial for us.
I love international students because I learn more from you guys than I think you learn from me. You have no idea.
Thank you so much. I think you got us, we got you. We got each other. I don't intend to get into any trouble, Patavee, but if I get, of course, you'll be my first choice to be my lawyer. If someone gives me a hell, of course, you'll be my first choice, because you represent a smart mind. Thanks for that. So now I'm so happy that a lot of guys have joined us today, including I see even Scholar Mudhoni and my colleagues. Thanks so much for those who have attended this forum. Tomorrow you are going to see the harvest that you're gonna make out of this. But now, because we are actually limited with time, I'm going to request Sebastian, a great businessman and a former student in Southern Illinois University, Edwardsville, and of course the board member of V4A, to take the next session through questions, answers, and anything else as he adds the session. Sebastian, can you hear me?
I can hear you, Solomon.
You have the red carpet, my brother.
Thank you, and thank you for wonderful leadership. I think information is power. And I think with your leadership, I think a lot of us are now able to pave our ways based on the information that we get. And the only way we prevent ourselves from falling into some traps is by getting the correct information, not just information, but the correct information. And also, I think with the information we've gotten today, we know what it means to make yourself irresistible, meaning that they can't do without you. You price yourself to a point where everybody needs you. And I think with the kind of information that we got tonight, then we are able to mold ourselves and make ourselves that product that everybody needs so that they can chart their way forward based on the destination that they have. So thank you so much, Solomon, for that leadership. We'll now jump into questions. And if you have a question, I'll say raise up your hand and I will pick up whoever you want to. And I'll go ahead and start off with Anthony Ndungu. If you want to go ahead, Mr. Anthony Ndungu, before we jump onto the questions that have been posted in our post. So Anthony Ndungu, go ahead.
Thank you, Patavee. Thank you, Betsy. Thank you, everyone, for the session. Very valuable. So I have two questions I'll just dive into directly. So the first is to ask, in terms of OPT and H-1B visas, are all companies in the USA, whether mid-size or Fortune 500 companies, depending on the size, allowed to give OPT or H-1B visa, or should they have special documentations filed for any individual? And then the second one is, what happens, for example, if maybe my master's is in public health and my previous qualifications was that I studied back in my home country, like in Kenya, was, let's say, in entrepreneurship or in marketing, and I've been given a job offer for that. Is it able to transition and take that job offer, or I have to stay within my current studies that I've learned in the US? And in a situation where, let's say, I am an ongoing student and I'm left with like 1 to 2 months to graduation, and instead of getting a OPT session, they give me a full job employment. Am I allowed as an international student to take the offer, or I first have to go through the OPT before I go to that stage? Thank you.
I think because that's a two-edged question, I'll let you respond to it just so we don't lose the content. So then I can jump into the questions that are posted, if you don't mind that. And I'll both of you, Patavee, then whoever has an answer can go ahead and give that. So I'll let you respond to that question. Patavee, if you're there.
You're on mute, Patavee.
Like I said, we've been very busy lately and my brain is full. So those are very good questions. And there were several in there. So I'm going to try to remember all of them if I can. So one, in terms of the employer. So really it can be any kind of employer. It can be any size. It could be a large employer like Nestle, but it could be a small or mid-sized company. It could be a nonprofit. In the materials, it talks a little bit about, I mean, you know, H-1B can be part-time or full-time. You can work for 2 different employers under H-1B, but they each have to sponsor you. So there's not really a restriction on the employer, but during the application process, both you as the employee and the employer are going to have to submit some information about, you know, your qualifications and education, the company and what they do, how much they make, you know, again, what the job offer is and what they want you to do for the company. So there will be some supporting documentation that needs to be submitted, but there's not any major.
No, but Patavee, he's asking, if he graduates in May, can he just start being a regular employee right away?
Right. So that was one. Yeah, no, you cannot. So if you still have OPT left, I would definitely, you know, maximize the OPT as much as you can. If they have not sponsored you for an H-1B, then hopefully you are here on a STEM that maybe you can stay here longer. You know, but maybe explore other options, whether you could qualify for an O or something else instead. What was the intermediate question in between those two? Because so in terms of what you can do if your field, so your studies is public health, is that correct? But you have experience in something else. So for OPT in particular, your employment does have to be related to your field of study. However, for as an employer to sponsor you for an H-1B, I think there's a little bit less of that requirement. It is going to be more about whether it's a specialty occupation and you have the qualifications for that. But I would be careful about that transition and you know, I mean, there may be some other issues in there to look at. So I would consult with someone and be careful, especially if you are kind of straddling two different fields that may be different from your field of study as an F1, but something else.
I would also say, if you are irresistible, the employer may write the job description, so it really only fits you. And so it becomes very apparent that when they post the job that other people are not suitable. But that's where being irresistible and working with a lawyer can help you craft the right way to move forward.
Right, right. And for job, you know, employment ads, we don't want to craft it so specific that it only fits you because the Department of Labor will see through that. But yeah, yes, certainly being irresistible, your employer, you want to make your employer want to bend over backwards and do everything they can to keep you.
But if something, you know, if a job is more generic versus if it says you also need to have some international skill sets, that then broadens potentials for someone like you versus the general public.
Absolutely.
Beautifully answered. And I think a combination of those two answers brings back to the word of the day, irresistible. So you gotta remember that word day, write it down if you have to, you know, just remember how to spell it though. You know, you gotta get it right. You gotta remember how to spell it. That's the question. The next one is, are there states that are deemed to be more friendly to students when it comes to immigration than others? And I think that can be answered with the second question, which is, there are states that are, how soon can we, no, some attorneys recommend to file for NIW and green card separately. There are loads of confusion. What do you recommend? And then the next one, can you share the range for cost of filing the NIW via your law firm? And I think those two, if we can pack those two together and answer those two together.
Betsy, do you want to take the one for states and who is more welcoming or not?
Yeah, I think that really it's based on skills and the different employers and the jobs, not so much by state. And again, the immigration laws are federal, they're not by state. So it's more finding the right employer, either by looking through a website like myvisajobs.com. And if you go to myvisajobs.com, it lists all the employers by state and city who have filed for them in the past. So you can see who has had experience with it. But as Patavee said earlier, you know, if someone really wants you and they haven't done it before, it doesn't mean they can't do it. Even a startup, I mean, they can all do it if they want to do it. Sometimes international students think that it's the cost that's the barrier, you know, or they're going to offer me less money because they can get, you know, they got to pay legal fees. And the answer is it's not, you know, it's going to cost them another $5,000 or $10,000, but that's not the problem. It's more the regulations, it's getting a separate lawyer, it's measuring the time, it's this lottery system that is a bad American system that we really need to get rid of, that Canada and others have gotten rid of. A lottery is no way to plan a business. So it's not because you're an international student or the money, it's the fact you have to work the system and understand how to maneuver the system. So it's not, there's no certain states that would be better. I really think it's about the relationships for your skills that you form and not a certain state.
I would agree with that.
All right. Do you have anything else to add, Patavee?
No, on that, I mean, I think it's like with everything. I mean, there are always going to be, you know, people who are less friendly to immigrants, and then there are always going to be very welcoming people who will be very supportive, and you can find them in every nook and cranny of every state, city, university campus. You'll find good and bad everywhere. So I agree. I don't think there's a, I think you'll find
What about the national interest waiver, green card
so
question?
can you repeat that question, Sebastian?
Let me get to it here. Just the question was, some attorneys recommend to file for NIW and green card separately. There are lots of confusion. What would you recommend?
So NIW does lead to a green card. So I think this is probably where we would either need a separate session to talk more specifically and kind of come into the 20,000, 10,000 foot level about, kind of how the green card process works. It's probably more of a street level specific to you and your specific set of circumstances of when is the right time to apply for something like a national interest waiver. I mean, the national interest waiver, so Betsy talked a little bit earlier about like O's and the EB1As, where you might, if you're on a PhD track, you might want to consult with an attorney early, because there are things that you can use to develop your criteria to be eligible for those types of visas, the O1 and the EB1A. So if you are particularly in a science or research field and you can increase the number of publications you have out there, the number of peer review types of things that you do, there are things that, especially on a PhD track, you have some years to develop that. And if you know as Sebastian mentions, if you have the information, you can act on it and you can incorporate that into your academic and professional planning. National interest waiver is more about like, is your work going to have a significant impact on, on a national scale? So I think it would depend. It depends more on kind of where you are. What is the nature of your work, and what is the kind of impact it will have? Again, one of the benefits of NIW is sometimes an employer will want to sponsor you for that work, and sometimes you can self-petition. So that may be a little bit more just specific to each student, each person, about whether you have the background to apply for an NIW, or whether the time is now, or whether you need to do a little bit more work before you're ready and eligible to apply for it.
And I think somebody else wanted to know, how soon can one start the NIW, the National Interest Waiver application for an MBA student? And I think it'd be good also to allude to, are there federal and state laws in immigration? And I think Betsy mentioned that, just to make sure that everybody understands what's the difference when you say federal and you say state. Some of them are international students. They need to get that difference so that one can understand what that range means.
Right. So in the law, there are certain laws that are state laws. So criminal laws, family law, certain things like that are governed by each state. So each state might be a little bit different. Immigration law is federal, meaning it applies equally to all 50 states. So I, as an immigration attorney, can represent anyone in any state. I don't have to restrict my practice to only people who are living in Missouri. And so, as Betsy mentioned, the immigration laws are going to be the same whether you're here or in Idaho. So as far as when
it's the best time for an MBA student,
when do you start to apply? I mean, I think one of the things that you guys will want to look at, so I know you have a lot on your plates. You're looking at your academic calendar, and you're looking at your semester and your classes and midterms and finals. You're looking at graduation. You're looking at like, okay, I need to start applying for jobs to have an OPT placement when OPT begins. There's a lot on your plate. The other thing broadly that I would look at is, when is your status going to expire? Because you do want to have a clean transition from your current status to the next, and you don't want to have any periods of where you are out of status or unlawful presence. So which is the whole technical, especially for F1s, it's not a specific date certain like it is for certain other visa categories. So that starts to become probably a street level and granular level question for you. Is you want to know when is your status going to expire, and you want to plan early so that you're not, as Betsy mentioned, you're not waiting until the last minute and thinking that you're going to get approved for something like, you know, a week after your status expires. That's not going to happen. And right now, in particular, USCIS is really, really slow, even on employment authorization cards. They're still slow because of the previous administration. They're still slow because of COVID. So nothing is happening fast in USCIS right now. So plan early. And again, I think I would probably put that in the street level. You probably, if you have questions, you might want to consult with someone and talk about your specific situation. One other thing, so for student visas, your F1 will expire when your OPT expires. So you will be an F1 during the time that you're a student. You will still be an F1 student. You will still have F1 status after you graduate. And then depending on whether you have the 1 year OPT or a 3-year STEM, you know, full extension, your status will expire when your OPT ends. And so you will definitely want to be planning well in advance of making sure you have a transition plan for when that happens. That's on F1s.
Thank you. I think something to point out, I think it's, you know, Betsy says here that networking is not just sharing business cards. You have to make authentic connections. What does authentic mean? Present yourself as irresistible. When we have such meetings, make sure somebody knows who you are, follow up, let them know who you are, what you can do, what difference you can make. I think that's how you make yourself authentic. Anybody else with a question that I'm missing out? I don't want to close you out because I think this is us. I don't think we have more time, but I don't want to close you out. Anybody else with a question in the forum? And raise up your hand. I don't see any other hands. And I don't think I skipped any other question. I'm assuming everybody took very good notes. And if you don't know how to spell the word, please let me know. And we'll spell the word irresistible for you. And it will make a difference for you. So let me thank you all for being here tonight. This was quite a good moment. We got most of the information that is helpful to us. And without holding you more further, our host, thank you so much, Solomon. I'll hand it over to our chairman, Geoffrey Sorentet, if you're there. And if there's anybody else from the board, thank you for your participation. Back to you, Joseph. If you need email, I see somebody says I need an email for Patty, and I will go ahead and hand that over to you. We'll post it up there in the group, then you can pick it up from there. That way you can get the details of the cost and just how you can get in touch with her in her law office. So I'll go ahead and invite Geoffrey to give a vote of thanks, and after that, we'll set you free. Thank you guys for your patience. You're welcome, and have a wonderful evening.
Thank you so much, Sebastian. Thank you so much, Solomon. Thank you so much to our panelists, our speakers tonight, Patavee and Betsy. We are honored to have you, and we could be here for hours, listen and listen. And I see I'm looking at the people in the audience. They've been consistent, meaning that the information you're sharing was very much needed, and they would definitely be able to share to use it. And what I always say is that be generous after this, whatever information, whatever you have learned, be generous to reach out and help somebody else outside there. Would just say, like Patavee said, we'll have another session, probably maybe like she said, around the time when students are coming in August. But in between that now and then, we always have different sessions that will be helpful in different ways. I think the next one we have is actually next week. Betsy mentioned about how you share and people know about you and how they connect with you. I like the part of building those network. We have a session about building momentum speaker series. And we've been doing that for almost 4 years now. This will be next week. And if you go to our website, on the event page, you will be able to see that all the upcoming events, including this Building Momentum speaker series, where we invite speakers, immigrants, to share their stories and share their immigration journey for professionals, but also for the students. And it's a good way for us to educate the other immigrants, but at the same time, it's also the Americans as a whole to know who we are and the value that we bring into the region, because it's through our personal stories that people know about us. And we encourage people to really be part of this, share your stories. And like most of the people say, that's how you become irresistible. When you share your story, people know about you and they know who we are. They want to be part of this. Then on April the 14th, we want to invite you all, the mentors and the mentees. The mentors, I mean high schoolers and college students, but also the mentees who have been here, they have walked the journey, they have made they've succeeded in one way or the other. Paying forward is the best way to do that. And the way to do that is to come in as a mentor, and you can be able to help somebody else not to make mistake that you made, help them make a better life. And when they succeed, we all succeed. So we invite you on April the 16th, and that will be at Maryland Community Center. We'll be there from 11 to 2. If you can just click there and link and sign up, that will be awesome. We have a youth that we are reaching out to youth from other states. And this time we want to do a way expose, like everybody say, get out and learn more, reach out to different areas and also learn from others what they're going through. So just go there on our website page, just click events, and then you'll be able to see all the upcoming events, but also feel free to check on our website and the programs. And if you want to reach out when they contact us, you can always be able to do that. The other important part, there is an important button there that's called Donate Now. We will also appreciate if you can do the magic over there. Other than that, I say thank you so much for your time. It's 7:26. We love you and we appreciate you for being part of this great family. And like I always say, we add value into the region, and we need to make people to know that we bring value here. We don't come to take away the resources. Thank you for those who have been able to step up and do that. Thank you so much. Have a nice evening.
Thank you, everyone. Asante sana. Good night.
Asante. There is a link
Thanks,
there.